Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Sustainable Activism Webinar. And this one is about diffusing drama, a compassionate approach to conflict. We're so fortunate today to have Lorrin Maughan with us, and she is one of our helpline counselors, and we're just very grateful to have her as part of our team of compassionate people assisting activists. So my name is Lisa Levinson, and I'm the director of the Sustainable Activism Campaign for In Defense of Animals. And what we do is we provide emotional and self-care tools for animal activists so that we can all continue helping animals through the long haul. So thank you to everyone for joining us. We're really here for you. We want to provide wonderful resources for you so that you can keep on doing what you're doing. So I think right now I'm going to take a moment and introduce Lorrin properly to you. So Lorrin, she's an activist and a coach, and in her business, she coaches people to help them find their most authentic and effective paths to sustainable activism and to achieve a deeper connection with other humans and non-humans with the help of companion horses, Gift and Fella. Lorrin's mission is to help animal activists and advocates create a more compassionate world, starting with themselves. So today, she's going to help us really look at the roles that we play that contribute to dysfunctional interpersonal dynamics. And also, she's going to provide a model for positive conflict as a compassionate alternative to drama. And I'm sure many of us are familiar with that term because that does happen in all movements, but also in our animal rights movement. So it's a wonderful resource to be able to provide this sort of webinar so that we have more tools to manage our emotions and to interact with others who also are working towards the same cause. So thank you so much, Lorrin, for joining us today.
Thanks, Lisa. I really appreciate you having me.
So for those who are new to this, what we usually do is we have our presenter, Lorrin, will take the show for a while, and she's going to present more of a PowerPoint type of presentation. If you're on the phone, we'll also describe what we're doing, and then we will send a replay link following this event, so you can always watch later if you'd like to. And if you're on the computer, you'll be able to see the presentation, and then following the presentation, we will open it up for questions and discussions where you can interact with Lorrin directly and ask her anything that you would like that relates to the topic. So again, thank you for joining us. What we'll do is I'll help bring up the presentation, and you might not see my face for a while because Lorrin's going to be talking, and I'd like you have the opportunity to focus on her for that period of time. So here we go. I'm going to share this slide. And there is also a link in the chat box to the presentation. So if you prefer to watch it on your computer that way, you can, or you can watch it the way that we have it presented here on the screen. So again, thank you so much, Lorrin. I'm going to turn it over to you now, and then I'll pop back in when we do the Q&A a little bit later.
Thanks, Lisa, and thank you everybody for joining today. I think that this is a topic that is pretty relevant to every one of us who engages in activism or even just any interpersonal relationships. So today we're going to just talk a little bit about diffusing that drama that we can sometimes experience. Before I move forward, I'm just going to acknowledge where this content is coming from. I'm a certified Leading Out of Drama facilitator, and I'm going to be using concepts from this model of positive conflict that was created by a company called Next Element Consulting. So I want to acknowledge them and thank them for the work that they've been doing over the last decade around to access a less dramatic, more compassionate, more useful way to interact. Just before I continue, I'm getting a little message that my network is a bit iffy. So can you all hear me okay? Just type it in the chat box if you can.
Yeah, something is happening to the sound. We just got a message there. Thanks to everyone for putting in the chat box. If it doesn't work, we'll just go back to the original. Maybe not using the headset and see how that goes.
Okay. Let's try that. Does that sound any better?
Let's see. Yes, someone said yes.
Okay, great. All right. Well, so thank you. Thanks for letting me know. All right, good. So this leading out of drama model is really kind of the next step for us. So let's just start at first and look at the idea of conflict. When I say the word conflict, what do you think about it? What are your impressions? What words come into your mind? Most people will think of conflict as bad. They think of it as a clash or a fight or a struggle, of course, the drama, right? And so, often even on the news, right, you hear people refer to war as conflict. So we've been conditioned by society really to kind of think of conflict as a bad thing. And really what it is energy. Conflict is not good or bad. It's what we do with it that makes it so. So if you think of conflict as energy, it's really just this state of potential, okay? It's wanting something different from what you have currently. So that could describe conflict within yourself. If you're struggling with something, you want something different from how you are right now or how you're feeling. Conflict with another person, you want that dynamic or something different from what they want, right? Between countries, they want a resource usually, right, that the other person wants as well. So it's all really just about, I want something different from what I have right now, okay? And it's inherent in everything. Conflict is a fundamental energy, a fundamental energy that exists everywhere. It's the basis for creation, right? Conflict and chaos are really what happens when creation is happening, right? So conflict is simply energy. If we can reframe it that way, we've already started to shift the dynamic, okay? The more invested and passionate people are about something that they want, the higher the conflict potential. And that's a good thing, or it can be a bad thing, depending on what you're doing with it. So conflict, energy, right? That's all it is. How you use that energy is what makes it good or bad. We all know what happens when good conflict goes bad. It blows up. Right? You end up having this drama, okay? Just like the bomb, the nuclear bomb, right? All that was energy being used in a destructive fashion. And so that's what tends to happen when we don't manage conflict well. It's drama. It's dramatic. It's what happens when people struggle either against themselves or each other, with or without their awareness, in order to feel justified about their unhealthy behavior. And we'll talk a little bit more about this justification thing as we go along. But just think of that. Drama is a struggle. Conflict is just energy that drama is using. Okay, so drama is negative conflict. And what does it do? It sucks the life out of everything it's around. Drama is the vampire, the energy vampire in every movement, every organization, every community, every relationship. So how can we shift that? What can we do to get rid of that energy vampire and to use that energy more constructively and more effectively? So let me just ask a few questions. Now, this is a list on a slide, so I'm going to read out these questions for people on the phone. And it's a bit of a self-awareness checklist. So think about this. Do you do things for people even when they haven't asked for your help? Do you avoid asking for what you want when you feel like it? Do you acquiesce or give in? Do you lose patience when things don't go your way? Do you get frustrated with others who aren't as committed to you as you? I hear that a lot, actually. If only they would just commit, if they could just do this, if they could stick with it. Do you avoid sharing your feelings about a situation because you think it won't matter, or if you think it'll cause problems if you do? Do you ever find yourself giving unsolicited advice, especially when you think that your advice is going to make somebody else better? Do you ever take negative feedback as a sign of personal rejection? Have you ever chosen compromise to avoid conflict? And have you ever used fear or guilt to influence somebody else's behavior? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, doing some drama in your life. It may be something that is coming from you or from others. You may have recognized this behavior in yourself. It's around you. You're not alone. We all do it. This is these are very common behaviors. Being aware of them, again, like reframing conflict as energy, being aware of our behaviors can change how we choose to respond, or actually how we choose to behave. So when we think about this drama, and we think about these behaviors, it comes down to a model actually that was developed actually a while back by a Dr. Stephen Cartman, who used this model, the drama, to describe unhealthy roles, interpersonal roles that people fall into when they're interacting with other people. So it could be intentional, it could be habitual, but at some point, we'll either find ourselves or somebody else playing one of these roles. Let me see if you're familiar with these. Right? Or being one of these at point. There's that for people on the phone, we're looking at a triangle, the drama triangle by Stephen Cartman, and he identifies 3 roles that tend to become, that people fall into when they're in a drama-based conflict situation. They could be a persecutor, so they may fall into that persecutor role. They may fall into the role of a victim, or they may fall into the role of a rescuer. And every time I see people look at this, it resonates with them. They've seen this, right? So let's look at how this works. People falling into the role of persecutor. It results in fear, guilt, intimidation, secrecy, right? People don't take accountability. The persecutor operates from a belief system in the moment of, I'm okay and you're not. I'm okay and you're not. So the behaviors that you'll see when somebody's fallen into this role of persecutor are things like blaming and shaming and intimidation, bullying, condescension, right? They'll attack, they'll manipulate, they'll judge. All of those are behaviors that indicate that somebody's fallen into this role of persecutor. And like I said earlier, we've all been or seen this at some point. Right? Another role that we may fall into is that of the victim. And of course, just like anything where somebody is feeling oppressed or overwhelmed, it can result in very low confidence, low morale, avoidance of issues and problems. So the belief system for the victim role is based on, I'm not okay, but you are. So the behaviors that you'll find people engaging in when they're falling into that victim role will be things like over functioning. They'll take the bullet, right? They'll do the work for you. They'll throw themselves under the bus, so to speak, right? So they'll overfunction, they'll compromise, they give in, right? Their boundaries are very, very weak. So they'll be like, oh, well, you know what? If it's okay with you, then I guess it's okay, even when it's not okay for me. There's a lot of apologizing when people fall into the victim role. A lot of putting themselves down. A lot of feeling hopeless, feeling like there's no control. And then the third role that people may fall into is that of the rescuer. And what happens when we tend to rescue chronically is that it results in a loss of initiative, right? The beings that we're rescuing, the person that we're rescuing, they tend to start becoming dependent, which may result in some resentment, which then may come into some other roles that they may fall into, right? If you're feeling resentful because somebody keeps taking away your power, you may start feeling victim. You may fall into that victim role, or you may get angry and attack, so fall into the persecutor role. But the belief system that is at work when somebody is in this rescuer role is, I'm okay, you're not okay, but if you just let me help you, you'll be okay, right? So behaviors there are things like giving unsolicited advice, right? If you would just do this, hey, when I did it, you should try it my way, right? Getting involved in people's issues or problems without their permission, right? Just stepping in and taking over, right? Helpful suggestions, right? Well, I think you should do this. What tends to happen when you do that, and then somebody doesn't do what you've suggested that they do because you're okay and they're not, unless they do what you say, is that then you may flip into one of the other roles. So it's interesting, right, to see these as I'm talking. I'm pretty sure that this is sounding familiar. That you may have found yourself doing some of these things, or that you've noticed other people around you doing these things. And that's contributing to the drama in our movement, in our organizations, in our interactions. Okay, let's see. Still cutting in and out, Summer. Let me try and move my little router closer to my machine. Okay, how's that? Are we still... I know we have some technical challenges. There is a thunderstorm coming in here, so it might be interfering with my network. So
yeah, I can hear you pretty well. So
okay, we'll soldier on. Okay, so when we're in this drama triangle, we find things with, like, the persecutor. You never do this. You always do that, right? Do it or else. The ultimatums, I'm done with you. I've had it up to here, right? You never listen. You're always choosing this. You always do this, right? Have you noticed people saying that? Have you ever said it? I know I'm guilty of all of these, right? I've been and seen all of these. The victim, right? Classic one here is like, well, I found myself doing this the other day. Somebody wanted to go and eat at a restaurant, and there were no real vegan options. And I kind of fell into a little bit of a victim there. I was like, well, I guess, we could eat there, I suppose, if it's really important to you. Whereas I could have taken a more constructive approach and said, I'm not comfortable eating at that restaurant. I'd like to find somewhere where there is a vegan option that I can eat. And do you have any suggestions about where we might both find a good meal? How do you feel about us trying this other restaurant? Right? It's a slightly different dynamic there than, oh, well, I guess I'll go to this restaurant and then I'll hate everything about it because there's nothing on the menu except, iceberg lettuce. So very different, more empowering approach, right? And I know for sure that I've been a rescuer. I know this for sure. I find myself in conversations with people saying, well, oh, I see you have,
Lorrin, I think the sound dropped out. So one possibility, yes, please call in. Thank you so much. That's our backup is trying the phone. So thanks everyone for bearing with us. It'll be just a moment while she calls in. She's getting the number and doing that, and then we'll be able to hear her. Sometimes when there's storms and other items, it's a little bit out of our control. We can take a moment just to take a deep breath and know the show will go on. And also just take a look, if you're able to see this Cartman triangle. It's a really powerful tool. Even thinking about in what ways do you relate to each one of the roles. We all do them at different times, and that sometimes we get stuck in one or the other, and that's when we might start to feel disempowered. And this model, if you're curious, the Cartman triangle is often used in therapy. So it's something that comes from a therapeutic context. And there's actually books and other resources that if you want to get a little deeper into it, you can. And it also, the same type of dynamic happens not only with other activists, but it can happen with people that we're campaigning against as well. Are we allowing ourselves to be in the victim role, or are we in a different role? Thanks everyone for your patience. I think Lorrin's calling in now. Let's see.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Better. Hello, I'm
we
back.
can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I heard you having some good discussions while I was trying to get back in. So thank you.
Yes,
Okay, so here, I'm going to hold the microphone right up to my mouth. See, is that better, everybody? Can you all hear me?
Oh, it's fabulous. I can hear you crystal clear.
Yay. Okay, good. So back to the drama triangle. Pretty sure we've all experienced all of these, right? Well, you know, you could reverse your type 2 diabetes if you just went vegan, right? Well, I guess I'm going to have to eat at this restaurant even though there's no option for me, the vegan, right? Or, you're a monster because you eat animals. How could you do that? You always choose your value system over everyone else's, right? Can you see how that might contribute to drama and to people not listening and to some of these dynamics that we saw in the previous slides, where when we're rescuing, well, if you could just do this, well, here, let me tell you how to do it, right? People aren't learning for themselves. They're not taking the initiative. It's not their idea. And we all know that when something's not somebody's idea, it tends to not stick quite as well, right? When we're being a victim, right? We start creating this cycle around us of we start to feel bad. Our confidence drops, our morale drops. People around us start to feel that. And they start to avoid us. We start to avoid the problem. And then obviously when we're persecuting, guess what happens? People feel defensive. They get guilty. They feel intimidated. So a lot of this ties in, I'm pretty sure you've heard Lisa mention more than once the model of nonviolent communication. And a lot of this ties into that, into the nonviolent communication. When we start to think about how we can be more compassionate in our communications with people, how we can make it an okay dynamic versus I'm okay, you're not, you're okay, I'm not, you'd be okay if you did what I said. If we can come from a place of we're all okay and we're all doing the best we can, and there are options that we can explore to do better. A little less invested sometimes in terms of angst that we can carry around interactions. Does any of that sound familiar? If you think about some of the interactions you've had lately, some of the conversations you've had, have you noticed some of these dynamics popping up? Probably. But we can choose another way. Okay, good. I'm glad the slideshow is working. Lisa, the last time we turned the webcam off, she said the webcam's stuck. The last time we did that, it went away altogether. So we'll give it a try, and then if it doesn't work, then we'll just have to soldier on anyway. Okay, good. So we can choose another way. We can be more aware. You know, as we're talking, I bet you're thinking, wow, you know, I've noticed that when I've done that. I've noticed when other people have done that. And as with all behavioral change, the first step is becoming more self-aware. Know how we are contributing to the dynamic, knowing how we're participating in that interaction. So if we can choose a compassionate approach over a dramatic approach, it tends to work out better. It tends to come in, you know, I don't know if any of you have ever watched Ray Sikora's webinars, but Ray is a master at choosing not to engage in the drama. And I see her as a role model, really. I look at how beautifully she does this sometimes, and I think I'm learning from you. And it does tend to make us all happier. It tends to make us all more effective. And let's look at this word compassion. Right? Compassion comes from the Latin word, or the Latin roots, meaning to struggle or suffer with. And when I say with, it's not an adversarial with, it's alongside of. Okay, so you can struggle with concepts, you can struggle within yourself, you can struggle alongside of others. And so compassion and empathy together are why most of us are in this movement, right? We're not broken. Neither are the people who haven't seen the world the way we do. They're not broken. There are just some things that are outside of their awareness. So if we can struggle with them, if we can turn this, you know, if you could see my webcam, which you can't right now, but the visual analogy that I'm using right now is two fists against each other, right? Two fists against each other. That's drama, right? Compassion is when you can turn those side by side, and that you can struggle alongside of each other, that you can work through it in a more collaborative, we're together, we're not against, right? And this whole notion of a more compassionate conflict model is built on the notion of compassionate accountability, engaging in positive conflict, with the purpose of encouraging personal responsibility and preserving dignity. And when we can do that, we find that things become more collaborative, that options can be explored that we might not have thought about when we were digging into our own position previously. And so when we think about a compassionate alternative to drama, we think about three essential skills that we can use to harness the positive energy of conflict. And those skills are openness, resourcefulness, and persistent. Okay, persistence. So instead of drama, when we use these skills, we can create open dialogue, we can create connection, we can create effective problem solving, and we can really drive accountability. So we're not taking on other people's stuff. We're not putting our stuff on them. We're all working alongside of each other to resolve the conflict, to find what it is that we want that we don't have yet. And so when you think about openness, openness is the healthy alternative to victimhood. Openness is courage and vulnerability together. It's self-awareness. It's empathy. It's being able to tell somebody how you feel without making it about how they made you feel. Right? It's being caring and vulnerable without compromising your personal strengths and identity. Being able to ask for help. Having confidence in your own adequacy, the fact that you're okay. Right? So using different ways of, and you'll notice if you've ever read anything about nonviolent communication, for example, is that oftentimes one of the things that people say is, I hear you. I can see your struggle, right? It's acknowledging, it's seeing that other person, it's meeting them there. I may have had a similar issue. It frightened me too, right? That connection, that human connection. Something that oftentimes we forget. We jump into resourcefulness, we jump into persistence, and we forget that until we've made a human connection, the interaction has not yet started effectively. So being open, starting at open, right? And you can be, I'm really angry about this situation. I want things to be different. I'm going to, do you have any ideas about how else we can approach this? What will you do? Because I'm committed to doing this. How do you feel about joining me on that path? So you can be very authentic. And as you move from openness, you start using your skill of resourcefulness. Right? This is where you come into creative problem solving. And you can see a lot of people will start here. Right? But if you've made that connection with somebody, coming into problem solving, curiosity, flexibility, looking at what has worked before, building on success and strengths, right? What options do you see? What's worked here before? Being resilient, trying again, right? All of that comes into resourcefulness. And it's not just you. So remember, the unhealthy counterpart to resourcefulness is the rescuer, right? And the rescuer is like, well, I'm the one who has all the answers. So I have to be the one who provides all the answers. Not the case. Resourcefulness is, let's figure out the answers together. Let's ask the questions. And this is actually something where I think Ray Sikora is a master, is that she is relentlessly curious in a very compassionate and very open way. It has to be sincere curiosity. It's not an interrogation, because that's pushing you into persecution, right? But curiosity, like, help me understand this. I'd love to know where you're coming from. I get that you're concerned about this. I get that you're not seeing the world the same way that I do, and I'd like to help, paint a picture of where I'm coming from. Are you open to that? Would you be willing to come on a journey with me? And then as you move through that, you move into this state of persistence, right? I'm not going to compromise my boundaries. I am going to stick to those. I will be persistent about that. There are some non-negotiables, and I will stick with those, right? I commit to that, and at the same time, I'm also committing to taking responsibility for that, right? I know that might result in a separation, or it might result in consequences, or it might result in something that was a different conflict that maybe then we have to move into a different conversation to resolve, right? But I'm going to take responsibility for it, and I'm going to expect that you will too, right? So if I am committed to being authentic, to searching for answers with you. And then you want to make a change, or if you want to take some behavior, I'm committed to holding you accountable for that. And I'm also going to hold myself accountable for continuing to see you as okay, and for continuing to own my stuff and that you own yours. And then you move right back into openness, reconnecting. Always come back to the connection. And I'm not saying that this is easy, by the way, right? As with all of these beautiful, elegant models, it is simple. The concepts here are simple. But remember that we've all been habituated to the drama model, right? We've all habitually fallen into these roles. And it's going to take a lot of mindfulness and self-awareness and personal choice to change how we behave, which will model for others how they can change. So I do absolutely have compassion for you saying this is not easy stuff, because it's not. And it takes practice. And sometimes you're going to try it and you might fall straight back into one of your old drama roles, right? And sometimes it's going to work brilliantly and you're going to be like, wow, this is how the world could be, right? So what I'm saying is I'm introducing the concepts here, right? I'm raising awareness. The next step is for that awareness and that mindfulness to be practiced. We have to observe ourselves all the time. Watch what we're doing. Be aware of how we're reacting, and take a breath, that beat in an interaction, that single beat of how am I going to choose to respond versus bam, I just reacted. So what we're translating our skills, learning openness, learning resourcefulness, learning persistence, is that we're bringing into being a dynamic of safety, of curiosity, of accountability. We're creating a virtuous cycle. So if you look at the old drama roles that we're all so habitually playing sometimes, you see what a vicious cycle it can be. And when you look at changing it, shifting it, creating a safe space for somebody to have a response, creating a safe space for yourself to have a response, right? Being curious, exploring. And then when behaviors shift, being accountable for what you've committed to and holding the other person accountable for what they've committed to. So openness plus resourcefulness plus persistence, coming all the way back around to openness again, gives us that safety, that curiosity, that accountability that allows us to struggle alongside of, to partner with another person, allows us to harness the creative power, the positive power of conflict. And so when we're practicing these compassion skills, empathizing, disclosing, Christian, I saw you said sometimes it's difficult putting yourself out there emotionally like that. Absolutely. Absolutely it is. And that's part of the courage of practicing openness, is to disclose that. I'm nervous about telling you how I feel because it hasn't felt safe for me in the past to do that. And I really do want to feel safe, to be able to own my emotions and to have them. I want it to be okay for me to have my emotions. So that disclosure, right? Validating somebody else's state without hijacking it, right? So if somebody's like, I'm so grieving for the loss of my animal, for example, you can see that grief. You can let them know that they're being seen. You can let them know that you remember how painful it was for you when you felt the grief of that loss too in your own life. And you let them have it. It's not all about you, right? So that empathy is I understand. When it happened to me, it felt like the end of the world. It felt like my heart was being ripped out and put through a grinder. And I'm sure that you must be feeling the depth of that pain yourself, rather than, yeah, and when my cat died, blah 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 blah. That's hijacking. But showing you care, affirming their feelings, sharing your truth, practicing resourcefulness, right? Acknowledging the effort that somebody is putting in, validate that, right? Build on that success, build on the strength, right? If somebody says, hey, I gave up meat, yay, good for you, that's great. How can I help you to take the next step? And here's some another resource is go back and look at the webinar archives for the conversation that Casey Taft had around some of the psychological impacts of positive vegan outreach, right? Celebrate their effort and encourage them to take the next step. That's your persistence. That's where you're holding them accountable, right? I love that you gave up meat. That's fabulous. How can I help you give up eggs or dairy? Or how, are you interested in taking the next step? Would you like me to share some information? Not throwing the information at them unsolicited, but being receptive, leveraging the success, building on it, and allowing them to choose their pace, right? Always keeping in mind that you're not excusing behavior. You're holding them accountable by helping them take the step rather than taking the step for them, telling them how to do it, right? And then the persistence, right? So that classic conversation, I just don't know if I could ever give up cheese, Well, you gave up chicken, and that's all around us. So I'm so thrilled that you did that. And I'm excited to see all these new cheeses coming out. Would you like me to share some other resources with you? Would you like me to tell you about some of the great plant-based artisanal cheeses out there on the market? Or would you prefer to do that exploration by yourself? Right? You've already taken the step. How can I help you take the next step? Right? And then they're like, yeah, you're right. I should give up cheese. Cheese is nasty stuff. Well, great. I'm committed to standing alongside you with that. I'm committed to helping you find the best vegan cheese that you can find so that you don't even miss the old stuff. Right? As long as you're okay with my help, would you be open to that? Is that something that might be exciting or interesting? Right? So, again, when you're practicing persistence too, by the way, sometimes we fall into the persecutor really easily, and it's okay to recognize that. In fact, it's okay to recognize when you fall into any of these roles and say, whoa, hang on a second, I just caught myself being, less than constructive right there. Can we start again? I apologize. I'm going to own my behavior right then. That was pretty judgy, or wow, that was pretty aggressive, wasn't it? Sorry about that. Can we start this over? Can we try it a different way? And it's really interesting. I noticed this when I was in human resources. I noticed this when I was in management. I noticed this as an activist. When I take ownership of my own behavior, and when I trip up, and then I go, whoa, sorry, I just noticed I did that. I don't like it. I'm going to stop doing that now. People go, wow, really? All of a sudden you have a whole lot more credibility, right? Because they caught you tripping. But then when you catch yourself tripping and you say, hang on a second, I want to do this differently, you're role modeling some really positive behavior, right? And then, of course, obviously on your persistences, I'm not going to compromise, right? I'm not going to come and enjoy a meal with you over Thanksgiving because it really does disturb me to see that turkey on the table. And so I'd love to explore different ways that we can enjoy Thanksgiving and that we can enjoy time together as a family or friends when none of us are feeling that conflict, right? Where we're enjoying the point of the day. So I'm not going to compromise that just because we have a tradition. I'm committed to standing in my truth. Okay. The bottom line, these are skills. These are muscles that we can develop, right? These are competencies that we can build. And again, always remember that you can practice this process within yourself, right? I'm feeling really nervous about trying something different because in the past it seems like it's fallen flat, and I want to be able to be authentic. I wonder what different ways that I could try, what options there are for me to feel confident sharing my truth. And I'm going to commit to trying it, to trying one thing different and seeing how it works and seeing if that helps me. I wonder, is that, yeah, you know what, I'm feeling more confident about it. I'm going to give it a go, right? And so you can walk yourself through the cycle internally. This isn't necessarily all about other people. We often have conflicts within ourselves, right? The whole conflict of I love my family. I want to stay connected with them. It rips me apart that their belief systems are so different. Where is my line? Where's my boundary? What am I going to hold to? You know, am I compromising my integrity if I choose to do this or that, right? And so I can have that conversation with myself. Yeah, I'm acknowledging that I have fear of losing them. I have fear of losing that relationship, right? I wonder if there are ways that I can maintain that connection with them and still stay true to my values, because this is what I'm not going to compromise on, right? And on it goes. So harnessing that positive energy of conflict, we can build a more compassionate world because we're starting off with very real compassion for ourselves and for others. So one, reframe conflict. Conflict is not bad. Conflict just is. It's just energy. It's what we do with it that makes it good or bad. Number two, raise our own awareness. Raise our self-awareness. Be mindful. And I know everybody in the world uses the word mindful, so it's become a little overused. And true mindfulness is a habit and a practice that seriously can make a world of difference. When we're observing ourselves, when we're being self-aware, that does build that beat into an interaction where we can choose a different reaction, a different response. And then choosing healthier behaviors. Whoa, I just noticed I'm playing a victim right now. You know, I'm taking on the world. I'm taking on everybody else's problems. That's not good. That's going to lead to me becoming a persecutor in about 5 minutes if I don't stop it, right? I wonder what's more healthy. Maybe if I can tell people, right, this is a frustration for me, or I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. You know, does anyone have any suggestions of how they can help me? All of those different ways to do it. I commit to doing this differently. So number one, again, was reframing conflict, right? Recognizing that conflict is not negative in and of itself. Conflict is just energy, and we can use that energy in a different way. Number two was raising our self-awareness, being mindful of how we're behaving, catching ourselves when we fall into those drama roles. And then number three is choosing a healthier behavior. And so there are some resources, and in fact, the one thing I didn't put on this slide, and I apologize, but is the Casey Taft webinar and the book that he wrote. Definitely adding that to this slide because it's a phenomenal book, very, very good resource. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Conflict Without Casualties by Nate Rogier. He's actually the guy that developed this model, the Leading Out of Drama model. And then a couple of videos there, so you'll see them if you're on the phone. Hopefully you are able to get the slides at some point. And definitely, you know, something that is useful for me, and I'm going to put this out there, I'm coming from a place of bias because I am a coach and I get coached, but having somebody in your life, whether it's a coach or a therapist or a good friend or a family member who can help you to become more aware, who can observe your behaviors, who can point them out to you, who can, engage in this with you, right? And then figuring it out together. It's always easier when you have somebody alongside of you. So that's the end of it. We've got about 8 minutes left for conversation, and I haven't been following too much of the conversation in the chat window because I've been talking. So let me just scroll back through and see if there's anything that we haven't covered.
That's fine. There's one question actually Christine had, and this was it was something related to how to communicate to people, like for example, when they're in. A second, I'm going to go back to it too.
Is this the one where it's when other people are behaving in ways that we're seeing them behave in a dramatic way, and we get frustrated because it shows our movement going forward, one step forward, two steps back?
Okay. Yes, that's the one. That's the one.
Yeah, and it is frustrating. I completely understand that. I get it. I get frustrated too because I feel like, come on, people, let's all get on the same page. And at the same time, I can only change my own behavior, right? So if I model a different way of being, perhaps if I have the opportunity to approach somebody and say, how do you think we can do this? Let's play around with it a bit. So I feel uncomfortable when I see you. Well, actually, I wouldn't even go with that. I wouldn't even use the you. I feel uncomfortable with violence towards others, verbally, emotionally, or otherwise. And I'd like to see us activists live into our values of nonviolence and compassion. How do you think that we could do that? Right, so when you first start playing with this, by the way, it does feel kind of stilted. It doesn't feel supernatural, but as you work through it, it does get easier. And part of it is also letting go of the fact that letting go of your attachment to them responding in a way that you want them to respond. Right. So again, that's am I playing a drama role here by getting involved in this situation? Is there a way? What is the healthiest way that I can do this? So if you broach the subject, right, I feel frustrated, and you can even say it exactly how you've written. I feel frustrated when I see activists behaving in ways that engage the public negatively. And how I see that negativity is I see judging and persecuting, basically. And I'd like to understand how we can shift that behavior. And I'd like I wonder if you have any suggestions for me. I wonder if you have any ideas about how we could have a different interaction to get a different outcome. Because I'm committed to representing this movement in the most positive, most effective way possible. Are you with me? Okay. And so it's going to take a while.
Yeah, well, I think that's, part of what you're talking about here is how do we engage other activists in that conversation so that we can all be on the same page or at least revisit the strategies in a way that can benefit everyone. There's another question here that's very interesting that relates to the topic of the webinar here from Diane, that it can be really hurtful when vegans are rude and unkind to other activists. How to deal with situations involving conflict within the movement?
Yes, and I've seen some of this recently on social media, and recognized, by the way, that social media has a great place in our society, and it is also a barrier to connection, right? So, so just acknowledge that, and also acknowledge, is this something that I should step into? Is this something that I should leave people to sort out themselves, or should I intervene, right? And then there are times when it's appropriate to intervene, and there are times that it's not. My preference is always to come into something like, what you just said, Diane. I find it really, I'm hurt. I'm hurt when I see my fellow activists hurt each other and attack each other. It's painful for me. As a vegan, as an animal activist, as somebody who practices compassion, it's painful for me. And I can see that people are frustrated with each other. I can see that frustration, and I can see how it's showing up. So would you be open to me making some suggestions, right? So that's where you're not rescuing, but you are exploring opportunities, right? I've seen the passion here. I know that you're all passionate about the same things. Would you be open to me stepping into this conversation? Because it hurts me to watch you. It hurts me to watch this dynamic. And I want to try and do something different. So may I step in? May I offer some suggestions? Are you open to it? If they say no, back off, then back off, right? Because you're not going to get anywhere without people's permission. And then once you're in, they're like, yeah, we don't like this either. We don't like, attacking each other or feeling attacked. Then the curiosity comes in. Well, I wonder how we can deal with this differently. I wonder how we can meet everybody's needs in a way that is not, that people aren't feeling victimized or persecuted. Mm-hmm. Right? What do you think? What have we done well in the past when we've had situations like this? Have we, where did it go well? I wonder if we can try that again. I wonder if we can, maybe take this offline and have a conversation face to face over coffee. Maybe we can, take it off the thread and have a one-on-one interaction. I'm committed to doing what I need to do to keep the safety of our space. How do you feel about us trying something different? And so you can kind of work at it that way. And again, this is chipping, right? This is chipping away, chip, 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 chip. And you just keep going that way. It's not, you don't, very seldom are you going to just have one miraculous spin around the cycle and everything's resolved, right? It's going to be like you're going to have, it's a spiral. You're going to go up a layer and then up another layer and then up another layer. You don't have to peel the entire onion in one go. Right, this is a process, and so I don't know if that helps, but that's my suggestion.
Well, I think it's very helpful, and one thing I'd like to share is just that we're starting it in defense of animals as part of our Sustainable Activism campaign. Is we're starting to offer conflict resolution or mediation. So through our helpline, people can call and set up mediation appointments. We have a couple of really amazing therapists on board who specialize in that, and they're going to be assisting us going forward. So I just wanted to let you know that that's something you can reach out to us for if you call the helpline and need something like that, where the situation has gone maybe a little bit further than in a conversation, and it needs some guidance. And one other thing, Lorrin, there's Christine was asking, do you have a link to the leading out of drama, the LOD? Is there a link to that?
I do, and actually I'm going to be offering some workshops, both online and in person, over the next few months. So let me find. I will find that. And I'll post it.
Okay.
Is it okay if I post that link in the Facebook page later?
Sure. Yeah, we have. So Lauren's referring to, we have an animal activist online support group, and that's where we kind of talk with each other in between these webinars. It's a great safe space to be able to have communication and share your feelings and and brainstorm ideas. So that's where we can post that. And also we'll send a follow-up email with the webinar link, the replay link, and we might be able to include that too. So we'll definitely
That would be
send
great.
that.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, it's my network connection. It doesn't want to play nice, so I don't want to destabilize it right now. So I will definitely get links out to everybody.
Yeah, no problem. And one other question also, if people are wanting to be able to share, I can switch the webinar into more of a Q&A. Since we have some technical issues, maybe we could stay on for a few more minutes. And if anyone has any questions, if they'd like to ask them directly using the phone or computer, you're welcome to do that. So I'll do that. We'll maybe take a few more minutes for a couple questions, and then we'll bring our webinar to a close. So hold on for just a moment. We'll hear an announcement.
All attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
There's one comment I saw in the chat line that I did want to address, and that's the idea of when you're behaving in a healthy way and somebody else isn't, right? And they're choosing to just stay in their drama role. Stay in your healthy role. Keep practicing your compassion skills. Either they will walk away and they will disengage from that interaction, or eventually, if you're sincerely, and that's the key here, you've got to be sincere about this. You actually have to care about them. Is if you're sincerely interested, if you're seeing the pain that they're in, if you're seeing their frustration, their anger, all of that, and you're saying, I'm here with you, let's find a way through this. Help, I'm committed to exploring options. I'm committed to seeing how this could be different. They may, as you chip, right? They may start to come around. And if they don't, that is not you. That's not your stuff. Don't take on their stuff. You commit to behaving in healthy ways yourself. Energetically, interestingly enough, it does shift the dynamic, and people do tend to react differently when you're coming from a different space, when you're coming from a space of openness and empathy, you're coming from a space of curiosity and resourcefulness, and you're staying committed to the path. It does tend to shift people. It may not do it immediately. So
thank you for addressing that. Yeah, that's important. That was one I was going to mention as well. It's so key. What do we do when the other person is not interested or doesn't appear to want to change or listen? So being committed, like you said, and really sticking to it and practicing the nuts and bolts of what is empathy. Really is being there for the other person, listening to their feelings, acknowledging what's going on for them. It is about that first, to build that connection, and then that openness will be there for you to speak your truth.
Right. The province that I grew up in Zimbabwe has a tribe called the Mashona, or the Shona tribe, and what I find really interesting is actually their greeting. Their greeting is, I see you. And a lot of Southern African tribes are like this. Their greeting is, I see you. And that is not complete until the other person says, I see you too.
Wow.
And that is, that's so powerful for me, is that I see you. And the other person says, I see you too. Bam. You're connected.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, let's see. I think somebody's trying to speak up here. Who is this?
Kristen. I've been having some computer issues, so I'm going to have to watch this on the replay. I've only been here for bits and pieces, but one thing that we were talking about in the chat box on the side is, when you're putting yourself out there emotionally and you're trying to communicate empathetically, compassionately, but sometimes you can end up being really hurt if you put yourself out there and it falls flat. And of course, it doesn't mean you shouldn't try to do that, but I mean, how exactly do you navigate that situation when you are being open, and especially when it takes a lot for you, and people are not receptive, or furthermore might just be out and out unkind?
Right. And that's, I think, something that a lot of people experience, right, Kristen, is that when you're so empathetic and you have this really big heart, oftentimes that can leave you very vulnerable. And when people are disrespectful of that, it hurts. My perspective on that is, if you look at the drama roles that we play, the belief systems that undermine or that underlie our reactions and our responses. And I'm wondering if there's a way that we can reframe those belief systems, that we can challenge them. Because if you are working from the belief system that I'm okay and you're okay, then if you say something hurtful to me, I'm still okay. And I think that there's some deep work there. You know, I mean, as a coach, that would be something that I would go into, is like how can we explore ways to tap into that I'm okay, to be able to feel safe enough to allow somebody to say hurtful things, and to not let it be a dagger to our heart. Does anybody else have any thoughts about that? Does anybody else have suggestions? Because honestly, I think when we don't share, when we're not open and authentic, sometimes we can be as hurt, if not more hurt, than when we are.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I find both things. I find that if I'm not open with people as to, you know, how I feel in a given situation, especially when someone has been hurtful, you know, that doesn't feel right, and that hurts me in one way. But also sometimes, especially when you have a history of people kind of rebuffing your, you know, attempt to be open, you know, it again, it hurts you in a different way. So I don't know. It's very stressful, I think.
Yeah, it's. Am I allowing somebody else to hurt me, or am I going to hurt myself? You know, it's kind of, sometimes that's the dilemma that we face too. Has anybody else got any insights or suggestions about how they've moved through that belief system and that fear of being hurt by other people?
See, I don't know if anyone else has opened their microphone, but if anybody would like to respond to that, you're welcome to do that by pressing *6 if you're on the phone, or if you're online, you can click the microphone icon. And yeah, I think it's really important when we run into that situation, at least for me, if I'm running into that and I keep trying and I'm in the same place and I notice the same thing happening again, I might step back and do what you mentioned earlier, which is to observe myself and start to notice what I'm doing here, because maybe my way of empathizing isn't working with them. So if we do offer empathy and they do really receive it, often people will kind of sink into this place of relief and really feeling heard, and the tension just drops significantly. So I think experimenting with, how do I really align and empathize with that person? How do I support them in that moment? Because actually trying to get our idea through is not going to happen unless we achieve that sense of connection, so the other person feels safe and is willing to listen to our truth.
Right. And there's that, you know, that observation of, am I feeling like they're making me feel this way? Because was it Maya Angelou who said no one can make you feel something without your permission? So
yeah, that's beautiful.
Am I giving them that power? Am I, if I'm saying I feel hurt in this situation, or I'm not comfortable with this conversation, that's one thing. But when we're saying you're hurting me or you're making me uncomfortable, that's when we've flipped into a drama role. We've actually flipped into persecutor because we've made it about them, right? You're doing this to me. So, and you're kind of flipping between victim and persecutor there, because you're like, oh, I don't own, how things are happening with me, and you've made it happen.
I have
Whereas
one more
if you can simply say, I feel frustrated. Say again, Kristen?
I have one more tangential question on that. A lot of times, if you're trying to be empathetic towards someone in your conversation, and you're trying to let them know that they're being heard and stuff, which, like you said, is a great feeling for anyone. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes people are so not used to that they almost don't understand. So how can you make it clear to somebody who might not receive that from other people or in other interactions that you are listening and you are supportive and you are relating to what they're going through on whatever level?
How do you think you might do that?
I don't know.
How do you think you might convey your sincerity? Mm-hmm.
It's something I find very challenging.
Mm-hmm. I know for myself, the curiosity can help. So if I'm asking them, I can invite them. It seems to me like you're in a lot of pain right now, or I can see how angry you are. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? Where is it? Where is this anger? How is it coming? Where does it hurt? I think being interested enough about somebody else to maybe ask them about their experience. That's my go-to. I find that helps me is I can see you're really angry right now, or I can see this really hurts, and I know when I was in a situation like that, I felt one way, but I'd be really interested. Like, help me understand your experience. Can you share that with me? I'm interested in hearing you. And sometimes we have to be that explicit. We just have to say to them, I'm seeing this. I hear you. I want to learn more. I want to be able to really understand your experience. For some people that's going to be like, whoa, there's a woo language and strange and weird, right? But if it's your truth and if you're sincere about it, amazing how people can be a little hesitant at first, and then all of a sudden they're just like, wow, sharing all sorts of stuff with you.
Yeah, I guess it is just breaking through that initial ice sometimes.
Yeah. A lot of this is just, when you first try something, it's like when you learn to drive a car. Everything was weird, right? Everything was weird, and you didn't know how to do it all together. But now, as you become more competent at something, you stop. When you first learned to brush your teeth, you couldn't really coordinate your hand. Try it with your non-dominant hand, and you'll see, right? But you do it over and over, and you learn that coordination. You learn that skill. It becomes smoother and smoother. Same with these kinds of skills. Clunky at first, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lorrin, for just digging deep into this question and into this topic with us. I mean, I think this is so helpful to hear how you go about it. What are the steps, and even what are the words? Sometimes I find repeating back what people say, even though it seems unusual, if you repeat back exactly what the person says, they feel heard. They feel like you listened to them, and you listened to them enough so that you knew the words that they used. And that's a very simple kind of mirroring technique that can help people to feel as though you care and you're listening. So again, thank you so much for presenting all of this. It's been a real treat to have you here. And thanks to everyone for staying a little while and listening to this this webinar. It's such an important topic, and one that I'm sure we'll revisit again and again. And also, Lorrin, it sounds like you'll be teaching some of these classes, and please, send us some information about that. I'm sure you have that up on your website, and then people who are interested in a little more can check that out. So
thank you, and thank you everybody for bearing with us with the technical issues.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate that. We're doing our best, and some things are out of our control. But hopefully we'll get a good replay for everyone so you can hear and see what everyone is also hearing and seeing. And just a little announcement for those of you who also follow our vegan spirituality online gatherings. Next week, we have Dr. Gabriel Cousins is going to join us. And so those of you who don't know who he is, he's really an amazing leader in the vegan movement, and he has guided people through spiritual journeys, medical journeys. He's a live food practitioner. It'll be very interesting to hear from him, and we have a special opportunity to do that next week at this time. So you can find info on our events page, or we'll also be posting it on the IDA Facebook page. And of course, I'll post an announcement on our Animal Activist Online Support Group, which is a Facebook group. So thanks so much to everyone for joining us, and especially thank you to Lorrin for being there and for putting such a very deep and thoughtful webinar together. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate all of you as well. I really do. It's nice to know that we're all in this together.
Yeah, for sure. And we hope that we'll see you, if not next week, we'll have our next Sustainable Activism webinar will be in October. We have them every month. And we also have an Animal Activist Online Support Group that meets in a couple weeks. So stay tuned to our event page and our posts, and I'll just type that in the chat box. I will send out these notes on the chat box for everyone so that you can get a little bit more from it later. Wonderful. So thanks again, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and enjoy practicing some of the resources that Lorrin shared with us. I know I will be doing the same. So thanks again, Lorrin. Everyone have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, you too, Lisa.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Bye, everyone.